Magic, Sorcery, and Witchcraft. The present lecture is to deal with three very important and to a very large extent much misunderstood subjects, namely magic, sorcery, and witchcraft. We shall endeavor to place these three topics in their proper position so far as we understand them, rescue them where needs be from misapprehension, and clear away some proportion, at least, of the rubbish that has been associated with them. To the average understanding, there is something terrible in the associations that are connected with the terms magic, witchcraft, or sorcery, and the uninstructed or uninformed shrink from all those who are supposed to be possessed of powers in any of those directions. The shrinking is the outcome in nearly all cases of ignorance of the powers and forces that are utilized by those who are what might be called adepts in any of these departments. For generally, people are ignorant of the fact that all can be done by the witch, the magician, or the sorcerer are possibilities to everyone else, to the unfortunate so-called victim as well as the so-called more fortunate master. The history of the world reveals the fact that the further we go back into the past, encountering the increasing ignorance of humanity in our backward progress, the more of superstition do we find, and as we recede from the positive knowledge and practical evidences possessed by man today in regard to the laws and principles of nature, the more and more does the world of life and action become peopled with subjective individualities, and instead of the ordinary laws of nature and principles of being, as the man of science finds them today, we find genii and devils and strange mysterious dwellers in the earth, in the clouds, in the winds, and in the spaces of the upper air. The further back we investigate these matters, the grosser and grosser become the peculiarities until they reach the age of barbarism, when they become so crude and devilish as to fill our souls with loathing as well as with wonder concerning how it was possible for men to accept such interpretations of the phenomenon of nature. Yet you have only to remember that ignorance is the fruitful mother of error, and that unintelligent minds are the resting places of all that bats and owls of superstition to be at one place in possession of the fact that the further you recede from the ordinary facts of nature and retire into the chambers of speculation, the more certain it is you will lose the law and order, and enter to that domain where fancy, superstition, and speculation run riot and hold high court, and seem to present a veritable witches' Sabbath in riotous fancies. We do not wish you to understand us as arguing for a moment that the phenomenon associated with magic, witchcraft, or sorcery are untrue. That is to say, that such things do not exist and such phenomena do not occur. This is not the impression we wish to convey to you. The impression we wish to place upon your mind is that the aforesaid phenomenon do exist and do occur, but that the cause of them and the interpretation of them and the means by which they can be obtained are not of the character hereof though associated with them. Magic, black, white, and red. Magic may be accepted as the supposed practice of the higher forces of the magician's power. Sorcery may be accepted as the lower manifestation of like power, while witchcraft gives us the disorderly manifestation of the sporadic spiritual phenomenon, transporting among certain portions of the human family, who are today known as mediums, but whose powers are now under the more or less orderly control of spirits, bearing distinctly in mind the superstition associated with what is now known as spiritualism. In the earlier days of civilization, you will be the better prepared to accept what we are now about to present for consideration. Magic has been divided into three forms: black, white, and red, while some writers have added to it also the consideration of gray magic. But this distinction by color only refers to the degree of moral quantity, or the lack of it, that may be involved in the operations concerned. The magician is supposed to be an individual who by certain training or hereditary descent possesses a peculiar power and develops certain possibilities far beyond those possessed or developed by the majority of his fellows. Not only is he supposed to possess this power in himself, With this power is supposed to give him the ability to control certain orders of invisible beings, or in other cases, to bring himself into harmony with certain orders of invisible beings, or under certain conditions to entreat the assistance and bring down the presence of still more superior powers than either of those just referred to. While the lowest forms of magical exercise are supposed to embrace a control of the demons, spirits, and sprites of this world, the lower classes of alleged subject material spiritual entities, beings on many planes of development. Now here we have, in the matter of magic, three separate planes of operation. In the first place, it might be inferred that the operations would all pertain to this world's life, its selfish desires, its individual peculiarities and necessities, and most likely would belong to those matters which are dark, degrading, and possibly undesirable. Here then we shall likely find all superstitious forms of invoking and evoking, by weird and strange processes, these alleged spirits of earth, air, fire, water, etc. Strangling stories are told you of occult gatherings where, under mysterious oaths and magical circles, with peculiar orders and strange and curious symbols, with many peculiar personal preparations, you are introduced to that magic chamber where these mysterious entities are by such processes they are brought to you and made your servants. But fearful oaths of silence are imposed upon you, and you are forbidden for your life to step outside of the charmed circle wherein you have been placed for safety. We have very little hesitation in saying that while the phenomena are perfectly true, the interpretation of them is decidedly erroneous, and that this phase of magic is strictly possible of interpretation in accordance with the ordinary laws of life both in nature and yourself. When we step out of the lower circle of operation into the intermediate, where the magician is more on a level with the spiritual intelligences he invokes, then we leave the lower orders of the alleged quasi-spiritual entities outside. We come out of the spirits of the earth, the water, the air, witches, and what not, and come into the class of spiritual intelligence, who are really disembodied intelligences, the people who have lived in this world, or alleged intelligences who have never lived in this world, but who in either case are intelligent, rational personalities. They may be appealed to for comfort and for aid, but are supposed to be more or less in harmony with and under the influence of those magicians who call them. In the higher planes, there is so much that you are already acquainted with in the spiritual communications that but very little explanation is necessary from us on that point. You appeal to the highest spiritual intelligences, you ask them to come to you, you desire their presence, and you invoke their aid and counsel, and you do this as spiritualists today, as it has been done in the world for thousands of years past. A sane and natural process. Now to show you how clearly all this may be properly interpreted, and a true fight cast upon it, let us call your attention to sundry facts that you as spiritualists are practically familiar with. In the formation of your spiritual circles, you have all the elements that magician has in the formation of his mystic circle, but you do not bum incense, you do not magical compounds and set fire to them, you do not draw a circle upon the ground and mark signs therein. You do not feel that you are going to draw up a bell to minister to your evil needs, or make spirits, gnomes, or fairies obey you, or go out of the earthly life yourself, or call down the great ones of the world beyond and command them to be your ministers, but instead you feel you are forming a circle for the purpose of evolution in spiritual phenomenon. You are virtually and practically embodying and obeying all the magicians have been able to do in the past, and the real result of circle holding, when scientifically attended to, is a reduction of the magic of antiquity to the orderly and lawful expression of spiritual phenomenon in modern times, neither more nor less. Then you will ask us, why are these incantations necessary? Why these mystic surroundings? Why this gloom, and why this wonderful personal preparation? There are all indicative of certain essential laws and principles that, when better observed in the fight of an intelligent understanding of today, will always assure your spiritual circle a far greater of measure of success than would be by case ignoring them. There can be no harm and possibly much good in the preparation for attending such circles by bodily purity, both in the outer person and inward character, in the cultivation of meditation, spiritual aspiration, and on the finer and better graces of nature. There can be no harm in being pure outwardly, inwardly, physically, mentally, and spiritually. No harm in your assembling in a room especially charged with the vitalic forces of those who are on to constitute the magic or spirit of the circle. No harm to prepare and form the conditions by which you can supply force and power which the intelligences on the other side can use. No harm in opening these circles in unity of mind and harmony of purpose which enables the invisible intelligences to enter into your presence. No harm in aspiring for the highest and the best to hold communication with you. No harm in having pleasant and comfortable surroundings and due consideration to the solemnity of the deep relationship between the two worlds of which you distinctly partake. There can be nothing objectionable, we repeat, in all this, because much good may come from it. In obeying these requirements faithfully, then you will in these modern times be in a harmony with the character of your present civilization, and in accordance with the exigencies of your own necessities, you will reproduce the essentiality and really valuable part of magical services and incantations, while you will not have the spirits of the earth, the air, the water, or the fire, or any such entities, though you may draw down by these preparations and processes wise and intelligent spirits who have once lived in the human life, who shall counsel with you and perhaps under certain conditions be able to attract to you certain cunning workers and psychological forces, who can do strange things, create lights which float around you, etherealize forms and figures which float before you, make strange sounds, move bodies, enter into the members of the circle, and do 101 things you have heard of in magical circles in olden times. Magicians impose on ignorance. Here, you will see you are dealing with the outer fringe of so-called magic. It is asserted beyond this a section deeper and greater where the individual magician can command the service of the invisible forces. Nay, some even go a stage further and say that the subtle forces of nature are and can be brought under the control of the will of the man, and that there are people in the world today who can play with the forces of the being so that they can send this thing and that thing upon you or to you, and in 100 ways manifest their superiority to the laws of nature. We denied the postulate entirely. Our observation is extended, our experiences has been widespread, for we have had an opportunity of investigating the so-called magic of the Oriental life to which we belong, and we unhesitatingly affirm you that when you divest magic of all its superfluous elements and bring it down to basic facts and laws, you will find that all the enlarged statements are either thoughtless or willful exaggeration. If you investigate, you will find that the alleged performers of occult things avoid giving any public statement, that they shelter themselves behind vows of secrecy and refer only to the result of the powers which they say they possess. And if you bear this clearly in mind, then half the glory of the three-fourths of the mystery associated with the magic in the past flee away forever. You may refer to the so-called occult and mystic orders of the east of India, Persia, and Egypt, and other lands, and in every case, when you refer to the magi of the past, you will always find them as we have just stated. When not teachers pure and simple, you will find that the adept has been trained in a certain course or practical philosophy in regard to man's mental, psychological, and spiritual powers, and that this knowledge is expressed in symbols and veiled in allegory. But when you penetrate the symbol and interpret the allegory, you will have the same kind of knowledge that you, as spiritualists, may be familiar with today. The same kinds of facts the spiritualists may be familiar with in this age, but to those who are not with the secret orders, who are not adepts, and who are kept in the dark, these matters are exaggerated in importance and character. Examine the matter closely, and you will find that it all comes down to the laws of nature and power of man, coupled with man's instable desire to gain knowledge, and the contempt which learning and experience too frequently feel for ignorance and lack of progress. Man's innate powers in nature's potencies. But stories have been told us, you will say, of most marvelous things. We have heard of the magicians of India and others who have done strange things. Now, are not these magicians? Yes and no. There is a man, a power to use all beneath him or upon a level with him to the extent of his ability, but the extent of his ability is the governing proposition. He cannot go beyond that. The power of the will, governed by the enlightened soul and intelligence, can accomplish in many cases that which seems most remarkable to those who have not been so trained. The ordinary conjurer can do things with his hands that seem to surprise you beyond all expression, and you think he must be really endowed with magical powers, but he tells you that he simply does all these things by the quickness of the hand, and so defies the seeing of the eye. And likewise, you will find that some of these occult stories have their foundation in the deftness of the hands rather than the exhibition of magical powers. Sorcery, suggestion, or hypnotism. When we have had to deal with the effects of magic is said to produce upon other people, we have to consider the sorcerer. Let us turn our attention to the operations of the sorcerer for the evoking of spirits, the casting of spells, the giving of life and bestowing of health, the individual who claims to do this and that for you, who has a monopoly of influence, who can give you half the world if necessary, or aid you to accomplish some great purpose. Do you believe such things? Do you believe that one individual made like yourselves, organized and constituted like yourselves, having powers that you possess, has been permitted by the Almighty Intelligence to exercise such powers while here in this world and arbitrarily interfere with all the laws and purposes of nature and God? If so, you believe things that are supremely silly, altogether beneath contempt. When viewed in the light of experience and the known laws and principles of the universe, the effects produced by the sorcerer in three-fourths of cases depended upon the fact of the victim's knowing that the power of the sorcerer is being exercised against him. If you take that simple element out of the proposition, the power of the sorcerer is reduced in the same proportion. When the power of the sorcerer effects a result without the victim knowing what is being directed against him, you can then put it down that a mesmeric or physical power is being directed by the sorcerer towards the person. Take out these two elements and sorcery becomes impossible. But of course, you are far too intelligent to believe in such a thing as evoking his satanic majesty. You have discarded all such opinion, and if you once empty the Christian hells, you might as well empty all hells besides, and just as well discard all the other devils, for they are of the same general family. Here then we stand. All this question of sorcery, supposed to be associated with the lower races of mankind, is but a blind and indefinite searching after the spiritual powers which you all possess, is one of the expressions of spiritual growth, just as the exercise of magic is one of the expressions of psychological growth, of the power to use the psychological elements of your nature. They are indications of what a man is going to do and become by and by indications all upon the lowest plane of individual development. And when bereft of the superstitions that surround them, they are resolved into the simplified facts of nature that in your larger experience you are familiar with today. Witchcraft, the attraction of mind on mind. We now come to the question of witchcraft. You have been bewitched by a laughing eye, a merry voice, a twist of the hair, a turn of the face, a charming manner. Oh, by these you have been bewitched beyond all your power to resist. A spell has been cast over you, which you have felt for years afterwards, and you have thanked God for such benevolence, for it brought you all the happiness in your life. Here you have the secret of witchcraft, the influence of one individual upon another. It may be laughable and good, or disgraceful and injurious. It may kindle into action the higher and better parts, or arouse all the lower and baser elements of you. May make you akin to the very angels themselves, or forge chains which shall bind you down to the lowest elements of sinuous life. Work out the problem on that line. All the witchy and bewitching resolves itself into psychological influences. The hypnotist makes his subject believe that a cold coin is red hot, that a gentleman's walking stick is the embodiment of the evil one, and by 1,000 different things bewitches the intelligence and faculties and judgments of his subjects, who, for the time being, is under a spell that compels him to do whatever the controlling mind desires or demands him to do. But the time was when these things were not understood, when those who were capable of exercising an influence upon other people were called witches, were looked upon as devilish, and mayhap have paid for it by being roasted alive as a burnt offering to heaven, as indeed many were so threatened. So then, when we take witchcraft in this light, think of how many thousands of your fellow creatures in this world had suffered pains and penalties because they possessed powers which God Himself gave them, for the exercise of attributes which with you are familiar today, and which passed unchallenged in the community at large. All human powers are natural. Magic, sorcery, and witchcraft then, in this light, bring themselves in the line and harmony with the laws of nature and the possibilities of man. They are uncanny subjects only when you fail to understand what they involve. They are dreadful and horrible things to deal with when you are led into them blindfolded and introduced to them in the dark. But when they come out to you in the bright light of day, when old associations fall from them, they stand out as prophecies of the powers that you are today personally acquainted with. We take magic then in another form, just for the moment, involving in this one term now the entire series of definitions that we have been dealing with. We will take it under the word occultism, and here we find the exoteric and esoteric side of the question. You are asked to believe there is a secret side to knowledge that is only for those who are fitted to receive it, that there must be a special order, a special class of people to receive the secret wisdom of God, and that only these favored persons are entitled to receive His divine knowledge, that outwardly it must be presented in symbols and allegories, and the common multitude who are not prepared to receive these things must be content to receive what the adepts and magi see fit to dispense to them. 3/4 of this talk about modern theosophy and the presentation of this Islam is only pandering to the most vicious element of the intelligence of the 19th century. Theosophy may tell you that there are only a special few who may pass the mystic portals or lift the sacred veils and path beneath them so that they stand before the inner shrines, while all you who are of the common clay outside must be content to hear but the echo of the music within, or receive it in symbol and allegory from those who have passed into a depth-ship beyond, as they may choose to give it to you. Tear down such trashy doctrines, dispel all such murky clouds, be not deceived by such specious statements. They are the towers that selfish and superstition erect to make something that may belong to all seem special and peculiar, pertaining to a class alone. God's eternal universe knows no common people and no great people. In the essential soul of man are the everlasting principles of God. Those who are willing and those who are able, no matter what their creed, their race, or color, have an intelligible right to the pursuit of truth as well as the pursuit of happiness. Snobbery born of conceit. Therefore, we say that all these pretentious claims about occultism, theosophy, or the mystical developments of supernatural power are the claims of the ignorant. They delude or the charlatan. People are deluded and deceived by such pretensions, they not knowing all points we have presented for the consideration. Our purpose in these remarks is to inform them and bring them face to face with the fact that whenever truth is divided in two, and half of it belongs to the initiates, and the other half of those to the outer world, then we say that danger and difficulty he in the pathway of the investigator, and one of the greatest dangers is the specious self-righteous, which causes it subject to say, stand aside, I am holier than you. This is what you wish to avoid. There must be none of the I am holier than thou in the pursuit and application for truth in the advancement of yourself and the well-being of your fellows. Shall we then people the mystic temples of the past with the living thought of the present? Shall we take to them our circles and our shrines? Shall we again illume their sacred altars? Shall we fill their chambers with odors and perfumes? Must we, as initiates, be put through trying ordeals, invoke the powers of the lower, middle, and upper realms of nature, ere we can enjoy the blessings of our spiritualism? There are questions spiritualists might as well ask the supporters of magic in their midst today. And shall we, with the light and guidance of modern psychology, indulge in the wild orgies of sorcery or witchcraft, or shall we turn aside from the old practices, remove the curtains, turn up the lights, put away the paraphernalia, and come down to the plain simple truth that the phenomenal aspect of modern spiritualism reproduce all the essential principles of magic, witchcraft, and sorcery of the past. The same powers are involved, the same forces are used, the same conditions are required, the same intelligences are operating, and the more you investigate the realms of nature by light of science and experience, the less and less room you will find for the devils and genii of antiquity. Magic and witchcraft and sorcery, when thus analyzed and interpreted, bring you at last only face to face with possibilities in nature, in harmony with her laws, in accordance with possibilities of yourself, and in strict accordance with the abilities of operating spirits. You return into the mortal sphere and produce all the marvels that are alleged to have been performed in former times. Patience has thrived on ignorance. It may be said, persisting this modern and practical interpretation of the three themes we have joined together, that we have ignored the existence of the great brotherhoods of the past. Nothing of the kind. We do not, since we are perfectly aware of their existence, but all they can present, all that they can do, is simply done in accordance with the laws of nature, and no man in any case can transcend the laws of nature, but in every case, no matter how startling the statement may be, the result has been accomplished in harmony with the laws of nature and the possibilities of man. Therefore, shall you waste the precious moments of mortal life in digging up the past when its facts are now living in your minds? Why turn the years agone? Why unearth the mysteries of the psychological phenomenon in bygone ages when greater wisdom is manifested and greater things are actually transpiring in your midst today, and that too in the light of scientific fact and experience, and in accordance with the highest methods of investigation, we will take the spiritual phenomenon of the last 40 years in connection with the modern spiritualism and boldly challenge the magical records of antiquity to produce anything equally satisfactory to the intelligence of today. Clearly, then, the past may be left alone. Let the dead past bury its dead, and let the living present be concerned in developing the life that is an understanding of the latent powers of mind and body, brain and soul. By a proper understanding of the laws and principles connecting the two worlds in harmony and unity, far greater marvels are revealed to you. You learn that a spirit can lift a solid article and transport it from one end of the room to the other, carry a message from one locality to another, carry your good will or evil will to some person you love or dislike, that it can produce a bodily form as well as reveal the mysterious of passing from the mortal existence. All these things are possible and do occur, and they occur because of the laws of nature. All that has been done by man in past and all that has been gained, you can do and you can gain, because every human being the wide world over is built upon the same lines of general organization, principle, and purpose. A clean life and understanding mind are the keys to power. We leave the topic to your consideration and urge you to accept this in conclusion, that the cultivation of the highest spirituality, the development of the noblest morality, the building up and strengthening of your will to its strongest point, living a cleanly and virtuous life, are the surest safeguards against the attacks of all kinds of sorcery and magic, of all sorts of witchcraft, that the facts of knowledge, intelligently directed, shall indeed make you a magician through the forces of your nature and for the accomplishment of many strange things; that even as the chemist, manipulating his compounds, produces miracles and seems to be a very magician jiggling with fluids and materials, so you, like the chemist, using laws and principles and proper agents, can be a marvelous magician in the psychological departments also while you are living here on earth. Live, then, so your knowledge can be usefully applied for the benefit of your fellows in the cultivation of your own natures, and banish superstition and ignorance from the world forever. For knowledge is the glorious sunlight shining into a dispelling and darkness, and the bats and owls so long residing there, hie them away to more congenial quarters where the sunlight does not shine so strong. May those bats and owls the world has called magic, witchcraft, and sorcery flee away to more appropriate abodes of shadow and other less illuminated parts of the world than that in which you reside, and in a place of witchcraft, sorcery, and magic, put the understanding of the psychological possibilities of man and being which, when applied to the needs of life, bless humanity and enlarge the field of human vision and knowledge, lift man up into communion and action with higher orders of spiritual intelligences who are always willing to help you forward and onward in your progress through mortality, through the brighter realms that be beyond.